What's going on, gamers? This is Token Gaijin here, bringing you your Jedi Guardian comprehensive build guide. If you haven't checked out my other comprehensive build guide on the Sith Assassin, click on the links below and check it on out. Also, if you'd like to jump ahead to the tree that we're going to be looking at today, check out the top bar up here. We're going to be going over player versus environment builds for the Jedi Guardian, and also giving you a couple hints and tricks, leveling it from 1 to 50, and also a brief overview of companions. If you're looking for player versus player builds and also looking for rotations for your skills, keep it locked to Token Gaijin Gaming because that will be coming in part 2. But let's get started with part 1. And just like my other guide, I like to go over the class itself and explain things. If you're new to SWTOR, or if you're playing SWTOR, basically each side has 4 base classes and each one can prestige twice. And if you've played it long enough, you've pretty much come to the realization that the Force users on both the Sith and Republic side are very similar. They're very mirrored. Every class is supposedly mirrored, but the Bounty Hunter, Trooper, and the Smuggler and Imperial Agent are not as mirrored as the Force users. The Force users are nearly identical. I mean, their abilities are different, but they feel like they do generally the same thing. Some people will disagree with me, but I play a lot of this game, and the Force users are my favorite to use just because I'm really big into Star Wars lore and the Sith and Jedi, and I basically feel like they're very, very similar. There's not much differences between them except for basically their style. I mean, you know, you're not gonna have a good guy Jedi user shooting lightning and, you know, using their rage or screaming and shit like that, but they do have very, very similar moves. And the reason why I went for the Jedi Guardian when playing the Jedi Knight class is simply because the Jedi Guardian just kind of feels like where the Jedi Knight should be going. The Jedi Knight itself is like the protector of the galaxy, and whether or not you're going for the Guardian or the Sentinel, the storyline follows that kind of path. It's very quintessential Star Wars. It feels right at home. It's got the lore. So if you're looking for a very good story that kind of follows what's traditionally been known to be Star Wars lore, the Jedi Knight is exactly something you're going to be picking up on. I mean, you protect others. You have a core group of people that are very, very dug into Star Wars. He's kind of like the Anakin / Luke Skywalker of the game. I mean, you've got a C-3PO, C-2N2. You've got an R2 unit, basically. You get a sergeant, which is kind of off the beaten path, but you do get like the smart-ass guy. He's not really a smuggler. He's your doc, but, you know, he does some great stuff. You get a Dark Lord, too. And you get Kira, who's kind of out of the romances I've played. This is only my second level 50 character, but I have got 2 other characters at level 30 that I'm leveling up to get guides as well. And so far out of the romance partners I've seen, Kira is pretty much my favorite. She's snarky, she's sarcastic, she's well written. So the Jedi Knight itself is packed with great companions and a good storyline. So if you're looking for all that, look no further than this class. And I picked the Jedi Guardian to prestige into just because I kind of feel that the Jedi Guardian is more quintessential to the game itself. I feel it's the best tank on the entire Republic side. That's just opinion, not really fact. That's a very good standard tank. It kind of plays like a standard Paladin. It's not, though. I mean, it's got its own Star Wars twist to it, but it's very, very, very Paladin feeling. So if you're used to playing the Paladin tank, I would definitely recommend the Jedi Guardian because they're very, very good at that. They can also do very decent damage dealing or as a DPS, but I really wouldn't put them as the main DD. I will be showing you how to spec it, though, for a DD in a party, because sometimes when you're grouping up with friends, you really don't get the choice to kind of choose what you're going to be doing. I mean, what if like all you and your friends want to group up and 2 of you are tanks and the other one guy's just like, you know, I'm the better tank, so I'll be tanking. You need to be able to respec on the fly, and that's something you're going to be getting used to in player versus environment. But we'll get into that in a second. Let's first go over basics of the companions. Now, the reason why we're going over we're going to be going over companions and also your crew skills. Now, companion-wise, when you're leveling from 1 to 50, you really can use whoever you want to. I kind of like to suggest going with a companion that's going to fit your class well. Since I play the Jedi Guardian as a tank, I didn't want any companions that kind of tanked as well. So I didn't really use any tank companions. They really weren't that beneficial to me. So I focused on healers and DDs, or damage dealers. And so T7, he's your R2 unit kind of guy. I really didn't use him too much. He's cool. I mean, it's really nice having an R2 unit. But he doesn't really do the most damage, and he kind of acts sort of like a tank. And I don't know if he's built like a tank, because I never really use him that much. I never really dove into his skills, but he kind of just jumps in, like, for an R2 unit, he kind of just jumps in the middle of everything and just aggroes everything, and kind of dies. And I don't know if that's just because I don't have any good equipment on him, but you know, the fact that he just kind of jumped into everything and died really wasn't that beneficial to me. I don't think T7 is that great of a companion. Some people use him all the time because they just want to get that feeling of like Anakin R2 going, which is great for a role-playing server, but I just really didn't like it. Kira is a great companion. She's the second one you get. She is pretty awesome. She's a damage dealer. She's a Jedi Shadow, so she does a lot of nice damage. I use her quite a bit also because she's the romance partner for the male Jedi Knight, and I felt that she, like I said before, has one of the best romances in the game. I really did enjoy Kira as a partner. She's got a great backstory, she's really interesting, and she's actually really useful. So I used her over T7 for a long time. If you're looking for a damage dealer, she's really good. You also get Sergeant Rusk, who can fill that role. I didn't use Sergeant Rusk just because he's very quintessential military. He feels like Arnold Schwarzenegger on a bad day. I really wasn't that interested in him. I mean, I assume there's more to his story. I just haven't really gotten into it. I'm more into leveling my alts right now. But I do kind of want to come back and learn what Sergeant Rusk has to offer. I just haven't really dove in too much into it. He's very quintessential military, so if you do like a military gung-ho kind of guy, look no further than Sergeant Rusk. He does fill that role. He's cool, but I don't know. He's not as interesting to me as other companions are. Then you get Lord Scourge. Now, I love Lord Scourge, and the reason why his bar isn't very happy is because I'm a goody fucking two-shoe. Like, I'm blue as hell. I'm light as hell. So I use him quite a bit, even though he's kind of the same. He's the Jedi. Not a Jedi. He's a Sith Juggernaut. So he kind of fills the same role that I was playing. The only reason I use him is because he's a Dark Lord. So that's kind of badass. He's an actual pure-blood Sith Dark Lord. He's badass as hell. He's really interesting. It's just we don't really have much love for each other just because we have very different opinions on how things should go. And then your healer is Doc. Now, Doc is awesome. He's got a great backstory, but the one thing I will say about Doc that's a really benefit to you is he's a healer. He's a phenomenal healer, and it's really useful to use your healers. Probably one of the big things that you'll notice, that one of the trends when I'm playing through SWTOR that you'll notice in my other guides as they come out is that I use the healing companion a lot, just because I feel that the healing companion is kind of the best one. I mean, they're really well rounded. I haven't met an uninteresting one yet. The one that you get for the Sith Inquisitor is Talos, and he's just a funny little archaeologist. And plus, his name is Talos, for God's sake. I mean, may Talos guide us. If Skyrim hasn't taught us anything, may Talos guide us, or just the Elder Scrolls in general. And Doc is also very interesting. He's kind of Han Solo-y, and he's fun to have around. He's a ladies' man. He's a bachelor. So I enjoyed Doc at his company. He's just interesting, and he's very useful. If you're playing a tank, I would definitely recommend using either Doc or Kira. Just bypass C2N2. He's just useless. If you're on the Republic or the Empire, your house ship droid guy is useless. Don't use him for anything other than your gathering or crafting bitch. I've kind of found that even though they're not as good as other characters at doing those sort of chores, he's really not useful for anything else. So that's all I really used him for, and he serves a purpose doing that. But if you're doing a tank, if you're doing the defense tree, I definitely recommend Doc or Kira. If you're going for a damage dealing role, Doc is always just very standard partner to have, but I'd also either go T7 or Lord Scourge. I would recommend Lord Scourge over T7 just because T7, even with armor, I got him endgame armor. He just seems to kind of die. I don't know what it is about T7, but maybe he's depressed. Maybe he just doesn't want to live. I don't know. He just jumps into battle and dies. Maybe he's I don't know. Maybe he's just overprotective and I'm reading too much into the fact that he dies, but yeah, he's an R2 unit, for God's sakes. I mean, if you're going into battle, is the first person you want to take with you an R2 unit? Probably not. So those are my recommendations for companions. Very standard stuff. Leveling 1 to 50, you really, I get asked a lot, especially on my Sith Assassin build, like, what builds do you recommend going 1 to 50? Really, I don't recommend a standard build. Really, to be honest, level 1 to 50 is kind of an experiment. And that's kind of how I use it. Use your leveling, your base leveling through your story as kind of an experiment to see what you like to do. A lot of people hyper-focus on building towards one thing. Play a class and have fun with it. See what you like doing with it. And that's kind of what I like to do. I experiment with all the trees. Since I am a subscriber, I can re-roll my skill tree at any time and get all my training points back. So I really don't have to worry about it too much. Even free players, I mean, if it's not that many credits. Mess around with your trees, see what you like to do, and that's exactly what I implore anyone else to do. If you're looking for a standard build to go for, 1 through 50, just kind of hang out in a tree, see what you like about it, explore it, and if you make a mistake, go back and respec. That's kind of what I recommend. Don't go crazy like across all trees. Kind of stick in one tree, see how you like it. If you don't like it, switch to another tree. That's what I highly recommend. Now, what I did 1 to 50 is I basically just main tanked because I've basically wanted to learn how this game handled tanking, and I also built this character to be a tank. So that's exactly what I focused on. And tanking, for people that are unfamiliar with MMOs, is basically being the group member who takes all the hits and takes all the aggro for enemies and makes the enemies attack them. Now, since we're going over player versus environment builds, it's very important to understand the sort of party dynamics that you'll be seeing here in SWTOR. Now, every MMO is different with their party dynamics. Some have way more kind of party roles than others. SWTOR is very basic. Since you're basically going to be running around with mostly 4-player parties, you don't have to get too advanced with it. There are kind of 4 different roles you can kind of fill. And I like how SWTOR is very simplified in that, because then you don't have to get like enhancers and enfeeblers and crazy off the beaten wall rules that other MMOs have. I mean, I have a very, very, very big background in not only WoW but also into Final Fantasy XI, which is probably the MMO I played the most. So trust me, I've played very convoluted MMOs, and SWTOR is really nice in that fact that it's very simplified with what your kind of role is. And the 4 roles are tanking, damage dealing, crowd control, and healing. Now, the Jedi Guardian can fit 2 roles pretty comfortably. That'd be damage dealing and tanking. More suited for tanking with the Jedi Guardian, but you can also be a damage dealer. You can have some viability as a backup crowd controller, but there are other classes that are far better at it. I would leave crowd control if you're going for a main crowd control, like if you're going for a world boss, or if you're going for a or you're going to an enemy boss that you need a lot of crowd control for. I would have a more dedicated one than a Jedi Guardian. They do get some nice stuns, but a Jedi Sage or a Sith Sorcerer is far better at being a crowd control for a party and a main crowd control. So I wouldn't really try to spec too much into being main crowd control. You're not going to do well. You're decent as a backup one. There is really no way to be a viable healer as a Jedi Guardian. Don't even try. If you do try, you're going to just fail because there's no way you can actually heal anybody. So I don't really know why you'd even do that. But you'd be looking more to being a tank or a damage dealer. And now there's 2 different ways you can kind of tank, and there's 2 different ways you can DD. We're going to talk about that right now. The 2 different ways that you can tank are standard tanking, which is basically being a badass wearing heavy-ass armor and taking everything to the face to protect those around you. This is very, very basic tanking. You basically just have a lot of defense. You can take the hits. You make the enemy hit you. You draw them away from your party. You keep aggro. You dish out damage. Very, very standard. I mean, I know I'm saying standard, but people that haven't played, that's how basic standard tanking works. You're a heavy armored guy. You focus on defenses, and you just try to get the enemy to hit you in the face. It's kind of weird, but you know, you're into that stuff. You know, you like pain. You're kind of weird. You know, a little narcissistic, but that's okay. That's why people love you. And then there's also shadow tanking. And shadow tanking is tanking in the sense that you grab the enemy's attention and don't let it hit other people, but you don't really wear heavy armor. You usually wear light armor, and you rely on dexterity or endurance to dodge attacks. So you basically want to dodge the attacks your opponent's throwing you instead of taking them to the face. And it's very, very, very important that you dodge them, especially if you've ever played a shadow tank before. I have as my Sith assassin. Let me tell you, taking hits to the face is not very fun as compared to someone with heavy armor on. Even though this armor doesn't really look heavy, it's heavy armor. And that's shadow tanking is a little more difficult to do, but also sometimes some situations are better suited for a shadow tank than it is a standard tank, and that's something you're going to learn in MMOs. Not really going to go over it in this guide, but I will tell you this from experience. You have to make sure you have the right tank for the job. If you're going into a boss that is very, very, very powerful, you know, just constant, like, really powerful hits, sometimes it's more beneficial to take in a shadow tank, because if you can dodge those hits, then you don't have to worry about it as much. But other times, most times, you're going to be rolling with a standard tank. But just make sure you keep in mind before you go into your endgame raids and runs and dungeon crawls that you look into the kinds of bosses you're going to be fighting, because you basically want to be picking out the tank that is going to be best suited for you. Now, on the Jedi side, the Jedi Shadow is the shadow tank. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory on that. So that would be what you're going for, a shadow tank. And your standard tanks are the Trooper Vanguard and also the Jedi Guardian. So make sure you're looking at what you're going to be fighting just in case you need the shadow tank, because sometimes shadow tanks are a little bit better at tanking than a standard tank. And the two different ways you can damage deal, or the Jedi Guardian can at least, is then there's really only two ways that I've seen in this game so far, is basically burst DPS and sustained, or basically we like to call it damage per second, or constant damage, or some people even like to call it rolling damage. Really kind of many names for it. I just call it DPS in general as opposed to burst DPS. And a lot of people just go, well, what's the difference? Both have DPS in them. Burst DPS, or we like to call it just burst damage, is basically being a damage dealer who has a lot of one-hit powerful attacks, and they utilize them in the rotation to best suit those one-hit attacks. So while you do have a ton of different abilities that you can use, you're basically trying to concentrate on buffing your high-end, high-damage abilities. There's many different ways to do this. There's a lot. In other MMOs, it's very, very kind of broadcasted which damage dealer is the burst DPS. But in SWTOR, it's a little bit more subtle. Each tree of damage dealing is a little different, and you kind of have to just play around with them to learn which one is burst DPS. And then standard DPS, or just, you know, damage per second builds, are built around basically just stringing together a rotation of attacks, as many as you can get to deal damage over time. Your single attacks will not do as much damage as a burst DPS build will, or their moves that are in them, but the whole thing about a standard DPS set is that you are utilizing your abilities in a chain that will maximize their efficiency. And the difference between them is kind of you have to assess the risks with them. When you're looking at a burst DPS build, the risk comes from missing your high-end attack. Like if you put everything into one attack, you buff it, you put it in your rotation, you get ready to unleash it, and you miss, you're kind of fucked. And that's where the risk kind of comes, is that, like, you have very powerful attacks. When they hit, you will maul an enemy to death, but if you miss them, it's kind of a big deal. And then DPS risks is kind of just that accuracy in general is also very important, but in a different way. You kind of have to keep the chain going, and if you miss the chain, you have to know how to recover. Because rotations aren't exactly definitive, but you need to know which aspects of your rotation are the most important to hit. So if you're missing aspects of your rotation of moves that are really kind of slowing you down, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, because it's more important to keep hitting all your moves in your string in a just standard DPS build than it is in a burst DPS build, just because you're kind of relying on the fact that all of your abilities have to hit to get the maximum effectiveness of your chain out. Now, it's really up to you kind of what risk reward you want to take. Each game handles it differently. SWTOR is not as bad either way, but there are it really kind of depends in SWTOR, as I've seen it, just on the class and the trees that they get, because there's really no advantage to burst DPS or just standard DPS in SWTOR, as I've seen, but you do have to kind of watch it in your class, because for the Jedi Guardian itself, just for example, I feel that the burst DPS build for the Jedi Guardian is far better than the standard DPS build. So that's just me in general, or the the feeling that I get from it. But that's just might also be my play style, because I'm generally just a standard DPS guy. I like having low hit attacks that I can just keep stringing together and together and together, and not relying on big hit attacks, because of those miss I'm kind of fucked. But, you know, to each his own, and I feel the Jedi Guardian, I played a little differently. I mean, I'm tanking, for Christ's sake, and I'm a damage dealer at heart. So let's go into the bread and butter while you're here. Let's go into player versus environment builds, because now that we've talked over and gone over tanking and the different ways in which you can do it, and also damage dealing, it's important to know how to fill them as the Jedi Guardian. So looking at the trees, we got defense, vigilance, and focus. Defense, as you probably have figured, is pretty self-explanatory. It's the tanking build. It's the tree that's going to best utilize you for tanking. You're not going to select every single box in here, and I'll show you the build in a second. But not every these boxes, kind of these trees, are built to help you in these aspects, but you don't get everything in them. If you are just getting everything in them, you're really not building your class to the best of your ability. And the builds I'm going to give you are kind of thought out. They're very, very popular. They're ones that I have been using, ones that I highly recommend. These are the ones that I'm going to be. That's why I'm putting them up here. And you're not going to be using everything in a tree, but the defense tree is very, very good for tanking. Then you also have the vigilance build. This is a damage dealing build that primarily is for burst damage dealing, or DPS, and this is the better of the DD builds, I feel. And then we also have the focus build, which is more of the standard DPS, just constant damage, constantly pushing it out. And the reason, before we go into this, we also should go over forms. Now, each class that I've seen so far has basically an add-on or sort of a buff that they should generally be using, a stance, a type of ammo. For the Jedi Guardian, it's called forms, and they follow the lightsaber forms. If you're familiar with lightsaber lore or Star Wars expanded universe lore in general, you'll be familiar with what these forms will do just based off their names. But you get Sorasu, you get Shicho, and you also get Shien. Now, each of these trees and each of the trees in other classes are built to be used with a specific form, or a specific ammo, or a specific buff. Reason being is that buff, or that form, or whatever it is, enhances your character in a way that kind of coincides with the gist of the tree you're building into. So that's something to keep in mind when we're going through these builds. I'll go over that a little bit more in detail when we're going over them. But you're going to be basically using Sorasu for a defense build. You're going to be using Shien for the vigilance build, and Shicho for the focus build. And let's start off with the defense build. Here we go. So when looking to start off your tank, let's start at the bottom, momentum. We're not going to get any points in that momentum. It does increase your force sleep and your zealous sleep, and you can get a blade storm for free. But that's not really as important to us, because while focus is important and what focus is, I should have gone over that a little earlier. My bad. Focus are these little kind of cylinders that you get. You see how they kind of deplete over time? Basically, the more you attack, the more focus you build. And you get it off of strikes and sundering strikes as well, build focus. And you can also get it off of combat focus, which generates 6. And there's some ability in one of these trees that also gives you more. But focus is what you use to actually utilize your attacks. Without focus, you don't have enough power to actually unleash your high-end attacks or your abilities. So you need focus, because without focus, you really can't dish out much damage or use many abilities. So focus is very important, and it's kind of nice to be able to get a move without focus by getting momentum, but it's not that beneficial to the tanking build, so we're going to bypass it. And we're going to put 3 points into Dust Storm. And what Dust Storm does is Force Sweep and Cyclone Slash, having a 100% chance to lower the accuracy of affected targets by 5% for 18 seconds. This is very important. Even though we're not a shadow tank, if you're tanking, do you really want every attack to hit you? No. If you can dodge an attack, you want to dodge it. Why? Because it's less damage you're taking, less that the healer has to worry about healing, and to be honest, survivability is key in tanking, because if you haven't really tanked main before, there's nothing more frightening than the first time you actually tank and you just see your health like constantly low, just like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, heal, heal, heal. So making sure your targets have a lower accuracy is really nice. Plus, it works off of 2 moves, so 2 moves can actually lower accuracy. Not only that, I don't think your allies are going to mind that an enemy can't hit anyone as much. So something to keep in mind, very, very, very useful. And I'm also going to put 2 points into Victory Rush, which now Centering Strike has a 100% chance to build 1 additional focus. since we need focus, and Centering Strike is something you're going to be using a lot to build it. Highly recommend getting 2 points. Victory Rush is very useful for any of the trees, but it's very, very nice to have because it's part of this tree. Now, we're also going to bypass Solidified Force, and that's because even though it reduces the cost of Freezing Force, Freezing Force is more of a crowd control ability. You get a lot of crowd control abilities. Freezing Force is one of them. It's very important to have crowd control or stuns as a tank, and you're going to be using them quite often to help bypass taking damage, but it's not as needed as other parts of this tree or other trees, so we're going to skip it for now. If we have some extra points, we might come back and get it, but I highly recommend not putting 2 points right away into it. Crowd control is important, but you do have a couple, you do get another ability later on, Hilt Strike, which will help you out with that. So we're going to get 2 points into Lunge, and what Lunge does is it reduces the focus cost of Repost by 2 while Sorosu Form is active. Sorosu Form is the form we're going to be using in the defense build. Reason being is this is what Sorosu does. It enters a defensive lightsaber form, reducing all damage taken by 6%, increases your armor rating by 60%, and threat generation by 100%. Sorosu Form also increases shield chance by 15%. While active, taking damage builds 1 focus, but all strike abilities generate 1 less focus. This form is just built for tanking. It reduces the damage you take, it increases your armor rating, it increases the threat you generate to help you hold enemies, and it also increases your shield chance, which shield chance, you equip a shield, it doesn't always go off, it's not always active. It goes off part of the time, so increasing the amount of time that it goes up to help you block damage is amazing. You're going to want to have Sorosu always active. If you don't have it always active, I really don't know what you're thinking about doing the tanking, because she shows out that beneficial, and you really don't get Sheehan unless you do a hybrid bastard build, which is not very beneficial to player versus environment. So make sure you have that shit active, and make sure you're taking advantage of Lunge. Now let's get 3 points into Guard Stance, and Guard Stance increases your melee and ranged defenses by 6 while in Sorosu form. In every MMO, there's different kinds of damages that tanks have to worry about. SWTOR is very basic. Again, it's kind of nice that you only have to worry about ranged and melee. And a lot of, I really don't see it too much in the Jedi Guardian. It kind of seems like the Jedi Guardian's tanking style is built to deal with both. But other tanks, I'm not sure if it's the same, have to worry about both close combat damage and ranged damage, because you never really kind of know what enemies are going to be fighting, and most dungeons have a nice mix, so you kind of get butt fucked from every corner. So make sure you're concentrating on not only upgrading your ranged defenses, but also your melee defenses as well. It's kind of nice that Guard Stance does it both for you, and it does it while in your Sorosu form, which you should be in all the time anyway if you're tanking. Now moving up to the next line, we're going to get this ability first. I usually like to go from left to right, but here's the reason. It's green boxed, which means it's an actual ability that you can put on your hotbar. If you can get these abilities, you generally always want to get them. There are some player versus player builds for some of the classes where you don't get all of the abilities, but not for player versus environment, so definitely get Warding Call. The reason being is it reduces all damage taken by 40% for 10 seconds. I cannot tell you enough how much Warding Call has saved my fucking little ass while tanking. It's a nice little holy shit move. You put it up, you defend a lot more, and you can just take a lot more hits. So trust me when I say Warding Call is something you want. It makes tanking a lot easier, and it's something you should be using for a lot of the harder bosses, especially if you don't have your player versus environment gear. The whole point of doing PVE is to get a lot of really good endgame gear. Also PvP, you do it too. Warding Call is going to help you if you don't have the best gear on you for those endgame raids. And trust me, getting extra reduction for damage is very important. Not only that, it's part of this line right here. Now you see where this kind of like fat part, like triangle pyramid thing is at the bottom of this box, or the top of this box. When you have a line connecting, you'll have it over here too. You have to have the ability at the fat part where the triangles are to get the other two. So we're going to want Hilt Strike, and I'll go into that a little bit later, but also because it's an ability and you just want to connect the lines, so we're going to connect the lines. Now, moving on over here, we're going to get Pacification, and Pacification increases the damage dealt by Hilt Strike, Force Sweep, and Cyclone Slash by 8. While we're trying to primarily focus on damage-dealing abilities, you're going to be using Hilt Strike a lot, and you'll also be using Cyclone Slash, and you do need to dish out damage. If you're not dishing out enough damage, you're not going to be able to hold enough hate on the enemy itself, and that's very, very bad for you, because if you can't actually hold aggro or hate on the mob, then it's just going to take your taunt, go over and hit you for a while, and then move on to your friends. And that's not being an effective tank, because your job is to take all the hits, to take all the hate, to take all the enemy has to offer to the face and laugh at him. So make sure you're definitely increasing your combat abilities as well. And we're also going to get 2 points into Purifying Sweep, and this allows Force Sweep to apply 4 stacks of armor reduction to all affected enemies. Armor reduction is amazing. Why? Because it reduces your opponent's armor, making your damage dealers and even your healer and yourself get extra damage on the opponent, which is very, 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 very useful in any player versus environment endgame dungeon. But it's also going to come in more handy for something we're going to get a little later. But trust me, armor reduction is an amazing thing to put on an enemy, and I'm pretty sure no one in your party is going to bitch at the fact that you're putting it on an enemy. And we're also going to get 3 points into Blade Barricade, which maximize your repost now increases melee and range defenses by 3% for 12 seconds, which is very good. Like we said, we want to increase our defenses as much as possible. So Blade Barricade is a very, very give and take. We're going to move on up and get Stasis Mastery, which now Force Stasis no longer needs it channeled to applying its full effect over 3 seconds. This is amazing. Even though we're not main crowd controlling, Force Stasis is it's actually your most powerful freeze, and it's kind of your most powerful stun. So you're going to want to make sure you use it as much as possible, and it's very, very important in tanking, because when a boss is about to unleash a very powerful charged attack, you kind of want to stop them. And Force Stasis is one of those that is very, very good to get off. And not only that, the fact that you don't have to charge up your Force Stasis, you can just kind of throw it off, allows you to effectively get that stun out quickly enough to dodge them from using that attack. And you're going to have a rotation of stuns usually when you're tanking. I'll go into that in the second video. But trust me, this makes Force Stasis a viable part of that rotation. And Force Stasis is going to be very important to you tanking. The more you tank, the more you're going to get used to using Force Stasis. If you're doing very good effective tanking, you already know what I'm talking about if you've already played the Jedi Guardian. It's a very useful thing to get. Just trust me, get Stasis Mastery. Now we're going to get 2 points into Courage, which while in Source 2 form, parrying, deflecting, shielding, or resisting an attack has a 50% chance to grant Courage, reducing the focus cost of your next Blade Storm or Force Sweep. This is just kind of nice. You're always going to have Source 2 up anyway, and now parrying or deflecting or shielding attacks, which you're basically going to be taking to the face all the time, you now have a 50% chance to grant Courage, and it reduces the focus cost of 2 of the moves you're going to be using constantly. So very, very beneficial to you. Very, very nice to have as part of your rotation. I definitely recommend Courage. Let's get 2 points into Blade Barrier. And now Blade Storm has an 100% chance to grant Blade Barrier, which absorbs a moderate amount of damage that lasts for 10 seconds. Nice, because Blade Storm is a very powerful ability. You're going to be using it quite a bit. And just trust me when I say get this ability. You're going to definitely want it. You're going to definitely want to get it. You're definitely going to use it. It's just something nice to have. Now let's go up here, and we're going to get 0 points into Command, because it reduces the cooldown by Force Push by 7.5 seconds. You're not going to be using Force Push too much when you're tanking. You kind of want things to be in your face as opposed to not in your face. I recommend Force Push for player versus player builds, because then you can push them off the edge of the map in some maps, which is hilarious. But not so much in player versus environment, not as useful to you. But we're going to get 1 point of Hilt Strike, which Hilt Strike is another crowd control move, another stun, and it bashes a target for 672 damage to 801 damage and stuns it for 4 seconds. This ability also generates a high amount of threat. This is very, very good to have as part of your stun rotation, but not only that, it can be used quickly in conjunction with Pummel Strike. And Pummel Strike can only be used after a target is incapacitated, and it bashes the target, dealing 2,077 damage to 2,108 damage to weak and standard targets, and 1,522 to 1,553 kinetic damage to strong targets. It's a high, powerful attack, and you can use both rather quickly. It's kind of why I actually usually have Hilt Strike right here in this clear box right here, down next to Pummel Strike. And what I usually do is I just hit Hilt Strike real quick and then use Pummel Strike right away. And that's a lot of damage. It gets off a stun. It's a nice little mini rotation for stuns. It's part of my... I actually have Pummel Strike as part of my stun rotation just because I use it with Hilt Strike. So something to keep in mind, especially when you're going to be stunning a lot of opponents in tanking. Utilize the two together. They're very, very useful. They're very quick. They get the job done very, very nice and fast. Now we're also going to get 2 points into shield specialization, which increases the shield chance by 4%. Like we said before, very self-explanatory. I want to make sure shield chance is up as much as possible. We're going to get 3 points into cyclone sweeps, and this increases the frequency at which Sorasu form can generate focus by 3 seconds. In addition, Cyclone Slash and Slash have a 100% chance to reduce the active cooldown on combat focus by 3 seconds. This is really, really nice since you want to keep using combat focus generally to help you gain focus when you're running out, to keep using your abilities. But not only that, you're going to be using it in Sorasu form anyway. You should be in Sorasu form while tanking, so you get all the benefits of Cyclone Slash and Slash giving you the cooldown reduction. So definitely very nice to have Cyclone Sweeps. I definitely recommend getting all 3 points into it. And we're going to get 2 points into Inner Peace, because Inner Peace increases the duration of Inua by 5 seconds, increasing elemental internal damage reduction by 4%. Very, very useful. Be at peace with yourself, because if you are, you will take a lot more damage. And finally, Guardian Slash. Now, like we said earlier, Force Sweep applies 4 stacks of armor reduction to all affected targets was very important. This is why. You want to use Force Sweep and then go into Guardian Slash as part of your rotation. Reason being is Guardian Slash strikes the target with a powerful blow, dealing 984 to 1,160 weapon damage and applying 3 stacks of armor reduction for 15 seconds. That's 3 additional to the 4 you're going to be applying with Force Sweep. However, this is what you want it for. If the target is affected by 5 stacks of your armor reduction, Guardian Slash damages up to 2 additional nearby enemies, applies 3 stacks of armor reduction to those enemies, and knocks down all affected standard and weak enemies. Does not damage sleeping, lifted, or incapacitated enemies. Generates a high amount of threat. You want to use these 2 in conjunction, because if you use Guardian Slash after you use your Force Sweep, you're going to get that extra effect. It's a nice explosion of blue light. It's very, very kind of cool and mystical looking. And not only that, it applies a shitload of armor reduction to everyone in the area and knocks a lot of people down. This is especially useful when you're fighting bosses that have little minions and goons that fight you too. They're usually weaker enemies that are just kind of there to annoy the piss out of you. But sometimes you get into a boss fight where you have 3 bosses or more than 1 boss. Very, very kind of nice to have, because you're stacking so much armor reduction on them that it's going to make it easier for your friends to help you destroy them. I highly recommend utilizing that as part of your rotation, or even just as its own rotation. Just trust me, you'll get a lot of fun out of it. Now, we do have 10 points left to spend, so we're going to be moving over to get some stuff in the Vigilance build to round out this build. We're done with the defense tree. Let's get 3 points into Single Saber Mastery. Reason being, a Single Saber Mastery actually increases all your different forms, and we're looking at the increases to Sorasu form. What it does for Sorasu is it increases melee and ranged defenses by 3%, and increases the threat generation by Force Sweep and Cyclone Slash by 30%. Very, very nice to get some more boons to Sorasu. We already do have a couple of boons to already having it active, but it's nice to have a couple more, because there's nothing wrong with enhancing your abilities that you already have. We're going to get 2 points into Improved Sundering Strike, because now Sundering Strike has an 100% chance to apply 1 additional stack of Sunder Armor, which is kind of nice to have, because if you have Sunder Armor down, then you have armor reduction down, you're going to be basically pummeling the shit out of your foes. Something nice to keep in mind. And now we have 5 points left. I'm going to put 2 of these bastards into Perseverance, because it increases the strength by 6%. Sorry, I looked like an 8 for a second. And that's very good to have, because we need to be doing damage to actually keep that hate and threat generated from an enemy and keep their eyes on us. So definitely good to get some more strength when we can get it. And I'm also going to get 3 points and use the last of them into Accuracy. Now, you can kind of use these last 3 points wherever you want. Some people get Solidified Force. Some people go over here and get Insight. I put it into Accuracy for one reason and one reason alone. If you've ever played an MMO, as a damage dealer or even a tank, Accuracy, I feel, is the most important stat you can have. Here's why. If you can't hit your enemy, you're basically just throwing your weapon around like a fucking idiot and blowing air on them. You're basically a glorified fan. Accuracy is the most beneficial thing to have. This is kind of coming more from a damage dealing perspective and mindset than it is a tanking one, but I feel the same generally applies to tanking. You want to be accurate, you want to make sure your shit hits, you don't want to fuck it up. Make sure you get accuracy whenever you can. As a damage dealer, I can tell you there's nothing more aggravating than going everything balls to the wall into one attack that you think is going to win you the game and missing it. Trust me, you see me playing MMOs and other games. If you watch the channel regularly, you know Death Wraith. You see him on the channel. He's one that can tell you from experiences as Dark Knight, nothing is worse than missing all of your special attacks and just being a glorified fan. So trust me, I recommend 3 points into accuracy. It's just what I do. You don't have to get towards Xian. You don't have to try to build towards that because Xian's going to be useless too. You're all about Sorasu. Some people I've seen try to get to Xian. I don't know why when you're tanking. Use Sorasu, get some accuracy, just do it. It's very beneficial. And that is going to be the defensive build for the Jedi Guardian. Let us reset our points and move on to the Vigilance build. Now, Vigilance build, as I said before, is a burst DPS build that is going to primarily focus on using the Xian form as opposed to Shicho or Sorasu. You don't actually unlock Xian form through regular leveling. It actually has to be unlocked through the tree. It's one of its green boxes. So we'll get into that when we get to it. So starting off in Xian, we're going to start at the base here. We're going to get 3 points into Single Saber Mastery. Really not that beneficial off the get-go, but the reason we're getting it is A, you need to unlock Xian, and B, it increases Xian form. It helps it out, and increases all melee damage dealt by 6% while in Xian form, since we are a damage dealer that is kind of beneficial, don't you think? So definitely going to get 3 points into that sucker so we can unlock Xian later on. We're going to get 2 points into Stagger. And what Stagger does is increases the duration of 4 sleeps, immobilizing effect by 1 second. Not the most important thing to get, but it is kind of nice to have an immobilizing effect off of a 4 sleep, especially when you're damage dealing. It gives you a nice little stun, a little of a hindrance to the enemy. So I definitely put 2 points into it. And we're going to get 2 points into Improved Sundering Strike. And like we said before, Sundering Strike now has an 100% chance to apply 1 additional stack of Sunder Armor. Very beneficial to you, especially since you're trying to get as much damage on the target as possible. You want to lower their armor rating as much as you possibly can. Get a little drink here. Now moving up to the next line, we're going to get 3 points into Accuracy. Like I said before, nothing is worse than being inaccurate and missing your powerful attack. And since we are a burst damage dealer in this build, I highly recommend getting as much accuracy as you can. Reason being is that since you're putting all your chips into big cards, you don't want to make sure those big cards miss, because if your ace in the hole misses, it's just as useful as basically having a dud card. So make sure you're getting accuracy as much as you can. We're going to get 2 points into Perseverance. That's pretty self-explanatory. You're a damage dealer. You want to have as much strength as possible. So definitely getting 2 points into that. And we're going to bypass Defiance. It generates 2 focus when stunned, slept, or knocked down. Those are kind of useful to have, but you really don't have to worry about being stunned, slept, or knocked down. I mean, you have to worry about it, but I generally use that more in PvP than I do PvE. Just the reason being is a lot of the times your friends can help you get out of being stunned or can take the heat for you while you're stunned. So I really don't think it's as useful. Especially since you're not going to be tanking a Vigilance, you're going to be more of the damage dealer at the side. You're going to take more damage from AoEs and things like that. So, not as useful as it would have been for the Jedi Guardian. Also, if you're not going to go for accuracy for the defense build, going back to that, I would recommend maybe going to the 2 points of Defiance. But we're not going to get it for a damage dealer because we don't really focus on that as much. And we're going to get 2 points in a Burning Blade. Reason being is your Blade Storm has an 100% chance to cause the target to burn for 202 points of damage over 6 seconds. Blade Storm is a very powerful attack. You're going to be using it constantly anyway. So why the hell would you not give it the ability to just generate burning on an opponent? The reason being is this. Burning damage is just extra damage that you get just for using the ability. Why, oh why would you not take it? Extra damage is extra damage. Take it where you can. Just trust me on this. Get Burning Blade. You're not going to miss out on anything. You're not going to regret it. Just trust me. Burning Blade is an amazing ability to have, and it increases your Blade Storm to a degree which is going to make it more useful to get that burst damage off, because it's a high power attack that you knock off, and then you just get extra damage just for utilizing it. So nice. And now we're finally going to get Xian form. And Xian form is going to be, if you're using the Vigilance build, the form are going to be in nearly all the time. And what it is it enters an offensive lightsaber form, increasing all damage dealt by 6%. All attacks that cause focus will fund 1 focus when used. In addition, taking damage generates 1 focus. But this effect can only occur more than once every 6 seconds. You get focus for being attacked. All attacks that cost focus will fund you 1 focus, and you deal more damage. Amazing form. And this is why I think Vigilance is just a better tree all around than the focus build. Because a standard DPS or a focus DPS is more about stringing attacks together, and it gets Shicho. It's built around the Shicho form, and all Shicho does is it's balanced form. It just increases your damage dealt and your damage reduction by 3%. It's not specialized like Shien is. It's not built primarily to be a damage dealer. So I feel that just because the form itself is built more for a DPS, the abilities you get like Burning Blade, just adding extra burning damage to your standard attacks, just things like this make the Vigilance build stand out in my mind of the focus build. It's just that much better in my mind. And we're going to bypass actually Unremitting. Moving on, we're going to bypass Unremitting because Force Sleep has a 50% chance to grant Unremitting, reducing all damage taken by 20%. More about tanking than it is about damage dealing. And then Gather Strength, whenever your movement is impaired, you gain 2 bonus to your next melee ability and cost of focus. This effect can stack 5 times. It's useful, don't get me wrong, but you don't really have to worry too much about moving around if you're in PVE as much as you do in PvP. Gather Strength is very beneficial to have. You have some extra points to lay around. I sometimes recommend getting it. But for player versus environment, I kind of just see it as something to just bypass unless you really don't have anything better to spend it in. So not as useful as what else you can get in this tree. Excuse me. We're going to get 1 point in Narrowing Focus, which generates 1 additional focus when taking area of effect damage while in Shien form. Since you're going to be dealing damage, you really don't want to be tanking as much. You kind of want to keep an eye on the threat you're generating. This is really, really kind of nice because you're going to be taking a lot more as a damage dealer area of effect damage and getting 1 additional focus just for being in the form you're always going to be in. It's kind of nice to have. We're going to get 3 points into Vigilance, which reduces the cooldown on Overhead Slash by 6 seconds and Bladestorm by 3 seconds. This is nice because it allows you to use your damage dealing abilities more frequently, and reduction of cooldowns is very, very important to a damage dealer, especially when you're getting off those rotations. And we're going to get 1 point in Fill Up Effluence, and Force Sweep no longer costs focus. Generally just a good thing to have. You just have a free ability now that you have to wait for the cooldown timer to go on, so definitely going to pick that up. Now we're moving on over here. We're going to get... Oh, forgot my own rule. You have to get the thing that's attached to the fat triangles before you... on the lines before you can get other things. Almost forgot. We're going to get Overhead Slash first to unlock these other abilities. And we're going to get Overhead Slash in general just because, A, it's a green box. Like I said, always get the green boxes because they're extra abilities to help you do damage. But also, it's a fucking powerful ability. It executes an acrobatic attack that deals 1,245 to 1,468 weapon damage. It is a powerful single strike attack. It is very, very, very built into the mentality of burst damage dealing. So trust me when I say get Overhead Slash. Just do it. And not only that, look at the abilities that affect it. Force Rush, Overhead Slash, and Plasma Brand having a 100% chance to increase the critical chance of Bladestorm and Dispatch by 60% for 9 seconds. So Plasma Brand's the last ability. We're definitely going to get this. And now Overhead Slash, an ability we're also going to be using quite often. Now an 100% chance to increase the critical chance of Bladestorm and Dispatch by 60%. That is amazing because critical chance or critical hits are basically just those lucky times where you roll the dice, deal damage, and get extra damage just because you hit them critically or you get a really good move. If you ever played Dungeons & Dragons, it's kind of like that. Just that extra damage, you know how nice it is. Trust me, Force Rush is an amazing ability to get. You definitely want it. It's definitely something you want to get. If you don't get it, you're not doing this job right. I'm going to say it right now. If you don't get this, you're not damage dealing effectively. You're not doing it right. Just do it. And we're also going to get 2 points into Burning Purpose. The reason being is Overhead Slash now has a 100% chance to set the target ablaze for 308 elemental damage over 6 seconds. Just like Burning Blade. It's an ability that basically just burns the opponent for more damage. Just get it. If you're not getting this, I don't know why you'd overlook this. That's extra damage. That's doing the job for you. You can be lazy as shit. Just use one attack and be like, oh, look, more damage. Don't even have to use a second attack for a while. I can drink some iced tea. Say fuck all. Now, we're going to move past Commanding Awe. Reason being, it reduces all damage taken, tanking. It has got some other effects, but really not as important to us. And we're going to get 3 points into Zen Strike, because Overhead Slash and Plasma Brand now have a 30% chance to finish the cooldown on Master Strike and generate 2 focus. Kind of nice. This effect cannot occur more than once every 15 seconds. Each rank beyond the first reduces this rate by 3 seconds. This is very beneficial to have just because it allows you to use moves more quicker, and that is something you definitely want to do, especially when you're looking into rotation. So I definitely recommend Zen Strike because it's going to help you out with pushing out the rotation for the Vigilance build a lot easier. Or more easily is what I wanted to say. And we're going to get 2 points into Centering Throw because it lowers the cooldown of Saber Throw by 5 seconds and cause Saber Throw to apply 2 stacks of center armor to the target. More center armor is always good, and especially since I like to actually start battles when I'm a damage dealer. I let the tank get the aggro, I throw my Saber in, and then after the Saber's thrown I do my jump in, and then I definitely hit with a Thunder Strike, get as much center armor as I can on that bad boy, and then just unleash havoc. That's just me, that's how I start the battle. It's very, very nice to have because lightsaber throw is not something you're going to be using when you're really close to the enemy, which is kind of where you kind of are as a Jedi Guardian or even the Sentinel. So make sure you're using your saber throw before you jump into combat. That's just a recommendation. Excuse me, I'm having really bad allergies right now. And then finally we're going to get Plasma Brand. And Plasma Brand engulfs your lightsaber in fiery plasma, striking a target affected by Centering Strike for 680 to 744 points of elemental damage, and deals a further 899 elemental damage over 19 seconds. A very powerful attack, Plasma Brand is. Make sure you're using this in conjunction with your Centering Strike, because if you do, you can definitely dish out some nice hate. Get that, get at least 744 points of damage sometimes, or 680 points of damage. But not only that, you get 899 more elemental damage over time. And this is where that damage is coming into play. I mean, think about it. You've got 3 abilities now that just do damage after their initial hit. Basically, you hit them, you get that damage out, and then they just kind of burn for a while. And that's very, very, very good because that burning damage from all these moves are going to be doing your job over periodic seconds for you. You don't even have to actually hit them with another attack, but the fact that you're going to probably be hitting them with other attacks is just adding to that damage pool that you're going to be able to produce. It's just amazing what you can do with it. Trust me when I say it is very, very nice, and why I think Vigilance is a powerful damage dealing build when compared to Focus. Now moving on over to the Focus, you're actually going to get some points into it to help round out this build with the extra 10 points we have, because we're done getting what we need in the Vigilance tree. We're going to get 2 points into Master Focus, which reduces the cooldown of Master Strike by 3 seconds and increases its damage dealt by 8%. Very self-explanatory, gets some extra damage out, increases damage dealt, nice to have. Cooldown and increases damage is always nice to have. We're going to get 3 points in Insight, which increases the Force critical chance by 6%. Like we said before, getting critical hits off is very, very nice to have and very crucial to being a damage dealer. We're going to get 2 points into Swift Slash, which increases the critical strike chance of Slash and Dispatch by 15%. Very nice to have. That's some more critical damage we can also get off. And then you can kind of finish the build wherever you want. I put my last 2 into Victory Rush. The reason being is with Victory Rush, Centering Strike has a 100% chance to build 1 additional focus. I like that. Getting more focus is always good, and you're going to be using Centering Strike quite often, so it's really, really nice. And you have 1 point left, and this is kind of the throwaway point. I put the throwaway point into Gather Strength. The reason being is it's kind of nice. You have your movement impaired, your next melee attack having a bonus. It's not as beneficial, but since you really just kind of have 1 point left over to throw wherever the fuck you want, that's where I put it. That's where I choose to put it. That's where I kind of recommend to put it. And that will be my Vigilance build. Now that we're done with our burst DPS build, let's go with our standard damage per second damage over time build. And that's the Focus tree. Now, Focus will be primarily using the Shicho form. And what Shicho form, it enters the balanced lightsaber form that we talked about. It does have a lot of boons, though, of 2 Shicho in here. It's kind of the gist you're going to be getting when you level any class, is that you'll kind of get the sense of what enhancement you're going to be clicking on. Shicho is the one you're going to be using in the Focus build. Now, starting off the Focus build, we're going to get 2 points into Master Focus, which reduces the cooldown of Master Strike by 3 seconds and increases the damage by 8%. Very beneficial to us because rotation is far more important for a sustained DPS build or a Focus DPS build. Definitely something you want to kind of keep in mind, especially when you're doing this build. So trust me, getting cooldowns lowered is very, very beneficial to you. Not only that, you're going to want to increase critical chance as much as possible because your single hit attacks are not going to do as much damage as it would in a burst DPS build. So definitely we're going to be looking at increasing critical chance and lowering cooldowns as much as possible. And with that in mind, we'll get 3 points into Insight, because that increases force critical chance by 6% on everything. And that's always good to increase the amount of times you're going to get critical hits. So definitely getting 3 points into that, because Insight is one of the most beneficial things just to get in general. And we're going to get 2 points into Swelling Winds. And what that does is increases the damage dealt by Force Sweep and Cycle and Slash by 20%, and lowers the cooldown of Force Sweep by 3 seconds. Like we said before, lowering cooldown is very important for a sustained or burst or a focused DPS build. So definitely get as many points into that as possible. Now moving on up to the next line, Second Wind is kind of nice because Resolute has a 50% chance to heal you for 10 of your maximum health. Not as something as important that we're going to need to worry about, especially in a DD build. So we're going to bypass this and go right to Zephyrian Slash. And what Zephyrian Slash does is, while Shicho form is active, which you'll always have active, all strike abilities, Slash, Blade Storm, and Dispatch have a 100% chance to reduce the active cooldown of Force Sweep and Zealous Leap by 1 second. Really nice benefit to have just for having Shicho up, since Shicho is not exactly the best form in the game. I kind of think it's kind of the like the form in the lore itself, not very good form, but that's just kind of me. It's kind of nice to have a boon. Zephyrian Slash will definitely help you out with that. And we're also going to get Visionary, because you now generate 1 focus when attacked in Shicho form, and this effect cannot occur more than once every 6 seconds. So basically every 6 seconds you generate another additional focus for just being attacked. Very nice to have. This helps boost up the Shicho form a little bit more, because it kind of needs it. It's not as good as the other forms yet, so definitely getting as many modifiers as we can into boosting up this form a little bit. And we're also going to get 2 points into Swift Slash, because it increases the critical strike chance of Slash and Dispatch by 15%. Very nice to have, because critical strike chance is what we're all about. We've already just increased our critical chance by 6% on everything, so kind of nice to have that extra enhancement as well. Now moving up to this next line, we're going to get 2 points into Saber Strength, which increases the damage dealt by Slash, Dispatch, and Zealous Leap by 6%. Very self-explanatory. We want to definitely increase as much damage output as we can, but also those are 3 moves you're going to be using quite a bit. Slash is very, very, very nice in the focus build rotation. We're also going to be getting Zealous Leap in our first ability. We only get 2 in this tree, which is kind of depressing, which is kind of also another reason why I think Vigilance is better. Even though one's a form, it's a very damn good form. And what Zealous Leap does is it leaps to a target, dealing 1,014 to 1,196 weapon damage, and immobilizing target for 1 second. Strikes with both weapons of dual wielding. This is the reason why it says that is because Focus is actually a tree that's shared between the Guardian and the Sentinel Prestige classes. And I will say this about Zealous Leap. While I don't like Focus as much as I do like Vigilance, I will say that Zealous Leap is a very powerful leap ability. It's kind of nice to be able to not only get it off and deal a shitload of damage, but also it immobilizes a target, basically giving you another kind of CC move that you wouldn't otherwise get. Since you don't get Hilt Strike, it's kind of nice to have Zealous Leap, because it allows you to stop an attack from coming out. Not only that, it deals a nice amount of damage. So I will say this, well, Focus does have its it does have its benefits. Zealous Leap is definitely one of them. It's a very, very good ability. Now moving on over here, we're going to get 2 points into Pulse, and that reduces the push back suffered while channeling for stasis. Kind of nice to have, especially since it boosts it 100%, so we're definitely going to get some points into that. We're going to get 3 points into Felling Blow, and what Felling Blow does is Force Sleep and Zealous Sleep having a 100% chance to make your next Force Sweep used within 20 seconds an automatic critical hit. An automatic critical hit! Automatic! Why wouldn't you take this? We're all about getting critical hits in this build, and Felling Blow is helping us get that off. So trust me when I say, get all 3 points into Felling Blow. Just do it. And we're also going to get 2 points into Singularity. What Singularity does is each tick of Force Stasis and Force Exhaustion grants you Singularity, reducing the Force cost and increasing the damage dealt by your next Force Sweep by 25%. Stacks up to 4 times. Because Focus isn't as powerful as a damage dealing build, something that I primarily recommend people do when they do the Focus build is be a backup crowd controller. It's really, really nice to have in the party, and I've seen it a lot. I actually had, before my guild split and disbanded, as you can see, I'm not part of any guild right now, we actually had a Jedi Guardian that actually was Focus built. And no, it wasn't a Jedi Guardian. I lied. I'm sorry for that. He was a Jedi Sentinel that was Focus built, and what he did was he not only was able to dish out a nice amount of damage with his dual lightsabers and everything, but he was really good at being a crowd controller, and not the primary one. We kept that to the Jedi Sage, but he knew what he was doing. he knew that when the tank, which was actually me in the party, when I couldn't get my crowd control off, he was actually watching it. He was watching my rotation very carefully. And it's something that when you get more skilled, you can actually kind of note and do. Is kind of watch when crowd control is happening. If you don't see the tank kind of hitting it right away on those powerful attacks, you know that you want to kind of interfere with them. And that's exactly what it was doing. And Singularity is very, very kind of awesome to have. Very, very useful ability to have when you're trying to get extra crowd control out. Because if you're going to be using a focus build with either the Guardian or the Sentinel, I definitely recommend making sure that you're trying to also back up crowd control, just because, and get those stuns off and do that stun cycle. Just because generally it's kind of nice to have a backup, and not only that, it's something that's a lot easier for you to do than it is for a burst DPS, because the burst DPS build really doesn't have any upgrades or benefits to actual crowd control moves. So it's definitely something we want to get. We're also going to get 2 points in Inner Focus, and what Inner Focus does is Combat Focus immediately grants 4 additional focus and 4 stacks of Singularity, reducing the cooldown of Combat Focus by 20 seconds. Oh my god, that's amazing, goo. Because look at it, Combat Focus gives you 6 focus, you get 10 now. 10 now! And the cooldown's reduced. Something you definitely want to get points into. Definitely beneficial. And when we move to this next line, we're going to get 1 point into Gravity. And what Gravity does, it reduces the focus cost of Freezing Force and Force Exhaustion by 1. Very nice to have reduced focus costs, especially when we're going to be using Freezing Force and Force Exhaustion a lot, especially when you're backing up as crowd controller. So definitely get points into Gravity. Agility Train is kind of nice because it increases your movement speed after using Zealous Leap, but not really that important in player versus environment. Not something you really need as much. Very useful for player versus player, but not something that is extremely useful, and we're not going to get it, so we're just going to bypass it. And we're going to get 2 points into Shicho Mastery because we want to increase Shicho as much as possible. Remember, it's more lackluster compared to the other forms, and this definitely makes Shicho form viable because Shicho form increases your armor penetration by 30%. That is amazing. You get extra damage off on people. Penetrating that armor is very important for damage dealers to do, and since you don't have those single hit, one-hit wonders that the Vigilance build, Burst DPS build has, you definitely want to get as much armor penetration and critical chance as possible, and Shicho Mastery is something that's going to help you do that. Definitely recommend always getting that, no matter what you decide to do. Even if you don't follow my build, just kind of use this as a rule of thumb. I recommend getting 2 points into this all the time. Now we're going to move on up to the next bar. We're going to get Focus Resonance, and that increases the critical strike damage of all force attacks by 30%. Pretty self-explanatory why we kind of want this. Critical strike damage is very important. We want to get as much critical strikes as we can. And increases that damage by 30% is just wicked awesome. So definitely get some points into that. We're going to bypass through Peace because it reduces the activation cost of focused defenses by 1. We're not concentrating on defenses, so fuck that. And we're going to get 1 point into Force Exhaustion, which progressively slows the target from 60% to 10% movement speed over 5 seconds and deals 277 kinetic damage each second. At the end of the duration, the target is crushed and takes an additional 736 damage. This is a powerful attack, but also it's kind of a bitch move. It's kind of like a crowd control move. Focus is, while I don't recommend it for PVE, you can kind of see by reading this that Focus is a great build for PvP, but not only that, it's kind of nice to get a kind of pisser move off, because there are times where you're going to be fighting bosses that like to kind of leap around and move around a bit. They're really fucking annoying, and Force Exhaustion is just going to really tie them down and piss them off. So why not piss off the guys that are going to piss you off by moving so damn much? And not only that, you're going to get a ton of damage off and a very nice hindering effect. Force Exhaustion is probably one of the best abilities that the Jedi Guardian gets. And really, while I do like, Plasma Brand and Overhead Slash, I will say this: I'm kind of at heart, I do say I'm a damage dealer, but I originally did start off as what's called an Enfeebler, which is basically, if you've ever played other MMOs, an Enfeebler's position is to tie down opponents as much as you can and kind of debuff them and annoy them. You use moves that are just going to make them weaker. And I have to say, with that mind frame, being from Final Fantasy XI, after playing that, I will say Force Exhaustion is probably one of my favorite just asshole moves. So trust me, utilize this move well, use it proud, put it in your rotation. Trust me, it's very, very nice to have. Now we do have the 10 points left, like we did in the other 2 trees, so we're going to definitely be looking to spend them. First 3 points are going to be going into single Saber Mastery. Reason being is, like I said, we want to increase Shicho form as much as possible, and that is exactly what we're going to do here. and it increases your skill in a single saber combat, or increases all force damage dealt by 6%. Very nice to have that boon as well. We're going to get 2 points into improved Sundering Strike. Nice to have some Sunder Armor stacking effect going on. Now, this is where there's two kind of ways you can do this. To end this build. Some people put 2 points into Victory Rush, 2 points into Momentum, and then 1 point into Perseverance to get extra strength. And that's fine and dandy. I mean, you know, Victory Rush is nice to have. Sundering Strike has a 50% chance to build 1 additional focus. It's nice. Momentum, Force Sleep, and Zealous Sleep have a 50% chance to make the next Blade Storm activate without a focus cost. It's really, really nice, especially for rotation. Really, there's 3 ways to kind of build this. There's my way, and then there's the other two. The other 2 ways is to do Victory Rush and Momentum and then get 1 point in this. The second way is called the Strength way, and that's to get 2 points into Perseverance and then 2 points into Momentum and then 1 point into Accuracy. And then there's my way. I get 3 points into Accuracy and 2 points into Momentum. Reason being is you want to kind of get Momentum to help you with your rotation. Zealous Sleep and Force Sleep having the 100% chance to make the next Blade Storm activate without focus cost is really nice, especially since it's a free move. But like I said before, accuracy, I mean, strength is important, but I just feel that accuracy is always going to be far more important. I always want to get as much accuracy as I can, especially for a sustained or focused DPS build, though. I mean, standard damage per second builds rely on getting as many, basically getting far greater amount of abilities off in a chain, successfully hitting each one. So you definitely want to make sure that accuracy is something you're paying attention to, because if you're not very accurate with that chain, you're going to kind of fall on your face, because you got to make sure you're hitting as many abilities as you possibly can in your focus rotation to best utilize it. And that is our focus build. That's how we're going to end it. I'm going to reset my points because I want to prepare for the PvP guide, which is going to be part 2 of this. That is it for the Player versus Environment guide. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you do like these guides, please do leave a comment. Let me know what you want to see in the guides. These are for you guys, so I am getting a couple things with the Sith Assassin guide. If you do have some things you want to see come out of me, some gameplay elements, things like that, let me know. Put it in the comments below. If you like the guides or want to check out more, check out my channel, which is just search Token Gaijin in YouTube and find me out there. Look at the videos we do. We do have a playthrough, actually, a video playthrough going on for SWTOR right now with me and my co-author Stash Burnside, and we're doing 10 tons of bird shit and Chillbro Swagginer, tearing up the Empire. I'm doing a playthrough with the Sith Sorcerer, and he's doing the Sith Juggernaut. And also, my fiance will be joining us in that playthrough as well, and she will be rolling the Imperial Agent Sniper. And after we do the playthrough of the dark side, we're actually be doing a playthrough with the light side as well. So you Republic players, don't feel bad. We just did the Sith side first. I don't know. Being evil is more fun in my book. And also, my fiance really liked the evil side, so we did it for her. And then we'll be doing the light side. And after that, we'll be doing a playthrough. I will be doing the Trooper. Stash will be doing the Scoundrel. And I really don't know what my fiance is doing yet. She'll either be doing a Sentinel or she'll probably be doing the Jedi Shadow, because they're kind of sneaky and shadowy. So definitely keep posted for those playthroughs. Also, if you want to see some more videos, some single post-game stuff, other things that my channel has to offer, check out tokengaijingaming.wix.com/tokengaijingaming. There should be a link right down here with the website. That is our website. We're going to be posting a lot of our videos, articles, things like that on the website. I do have a team of 3 authors right now, me myself included in that. We're going to be expanding, getting some more authors in, just trying to get a nice little website going on for MMOs and things like that. I basically head up the SWTOR MMO guides and things like that. That's kind of where I'm going to be specializing in. Stash Burnside, my co-playthrough partner for this games playthrough, is going to be focusing on Terra. He's kind of really good at Terra. He's the best out of all my friends at Terra, and Terra is another very popular MMO out right now. So if you do like Terra, you want to see what Terra is all about, check out Stash Burnside's gameplay. We're also going to be having a playthrough of those coming up on the site as well, and also guides coming out from Stash Burnside. Keep an eye out for that. And also, we're going to be bringing out Guild Wars as well. That's Death Wraith, my other author's domain. And we do have some of the playthrough for Guild Wars already up on the website and on the channel. So if you do like Guild Wars and want to check it out, go check out Death Race stuff. He's also going to be posting guides relatively soon. He doesn't have any yet because he doesn't have fraps yet. And his computer's been kind of taking a shit on him. He's kind of got a Frankenstein laptop right now. So kind of been hard for him to commit to the guides as of late. But he will be bringing stuff out relatively soon. For all your gaming needs, do check out Token Gaijin Gaming. And also keep an eye out for the second part of the Jedi Guardian Comprehensive Build Guide. I hope you enjoyed part 1. Please like, subscribe, and submit a comment with any suggestions or anything you want me to show you. And keep it locked.